What if the greatest love of your life is still ahead of you, and the only thing standing in the way is the lie that you're too old to be desired? No one talks about the silent fear after 60, the fear of never being looked at that way again. But what if attraction was never about youth, and everything about courage, depth, and finally choosing love without apology? Let me tell you something no one says out loud. The world doesn't expect you to want love after 60. Somewhere along the way, society quietly whispers a lie. That chapter is over. Passion belongs to the young. At your age, you should be grateful for companionship, not craving intimacy. And if you've ever felt your heart beat faster for someone, if you've ever longed to be held, if you've ever missed the electricity of being truly wanted, you may have felt something else too: guilt, embarrassment, the need to shrink your desire so it doesn't make others uncomfortable. But here's the truth that changes everything. You don't stop desiring, you stop apologizing for it. Desire does not expire, it evolves. At 25, desire often comes from insecurity. You want to be chosen because you're still trying to prove your worth. You chase attention, you chase validation, you confuse intensity with intimacy. But at 60, it's different. Now, when you desire someone, it's not because you need to feel enough. It's because you already know you are enough and you want to share that fullness with someone else. That is power. Love after 60 is not desperate. It's not inappropriate. It's not embarrassing. It's intentional. You are no longer chasing fireworks that burn out in weeks. You are choosing warmth that lasts through winter. You are not looking for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone to sit beside you as two whole people. And here's the part no one talks about. Desire at this stage is often deeper than it ever was before. Because now it's layered with life. It carries the wisdom of heartbreak, the humility of loss, the gratitude that comes from knowing time is precious. When someone holds your hand at 60, it means more. When someone looks at you with longing, it feels different because you understand what it took to get here. You've survived disappointment. You've outgrown illusions. You've learned that bodies change, but tenderness doesn't. Intimacy becomes less about performance and more about presence. You don't need perfect skin, you need steady hands. You don't need endless passion, you need someone who stays. And perhaps the biggest life lesson of all is this: the only thing that ever made your desire wrong was the shame attached to it. The moment you release that shame, the moment you allow yourself to want without apology, something extraordinary happens. You feel alive again, not reckless, not immature, alive. So if your heart still stirs, if you still hope to be touched, seen, chosen, don't silence it. Because the real tragedy is not aging. The real tragedy is convincing yourself you are no longer allowed to feel. And that was never true. There is a quiet kind of grief that lives inside many people over 60. It doesn't always show on the outside. You still smile, you still show up, you still function, but inside, there are chapters no one asks about: a marriage that slowly faded into silence, a betrayal that changed how you trust, a partner you buried, and with them the future you imagined. Years of emotional loneliness spent sleeping beside someone who no longer saw you. These are invisible stories, and they shape how you love. After loss, the idea of loving again can feel terrifying, not because you don't want it, but because you do. There's guilt. What would they think? Am I dishonoring what we had? There's fear. What if I survive this too and lose again? And there's exhaustion. Do I even have the strength to open my heart one more time? But here's what no one talks about: your heart doesn't retire. Grief may slow it down, pain may make it cautious, time may make it quieter, but it still beats for connection. The heart is not like a job you leave behind when you reach a certain age. It is a living thing, and as long as it beats, it remembers how to reach for warmth. Loving again after grief does not mean you forgot. It means you survived. You didn't stop loving the person you lost. You simply learned that love doesn't disappear when someone does. It transforms, it softens, it becomes memory, and memory can coexist with new beginnings. That's the life lesson grief teaches us, even when it hurts. Love is not a finite resource. Your heart is not a room with only one seat. There is space for what was and what could still be. At 30, love often feels reckless. At 60, love feels sacred because now you understand what it costs. You know the weight of promises. You know how quickly forever can change. You know that waking up next to someone is not guaranteed. And that knowledge doesn't weaken love, it deepens it. When someone chooses to love again after grief, it is not because they are lonely, it is because they are brave. It takes courage to say, I know how this can end, and I still choose to begin. That is not betrayal, that is honor. It honors the love you once had by refusing to let loss turn your heart to stone. It honors your humanity by acknowledging that connection is not a weakness. It is the reason you survived in the first place. And maybe the most important truth of all is this: you are not meant to grieve forever. You are meant to carry your grief and still live, to laugh again without guilt, to hold someone without fear, to feel desire without apology. Love after loss will never look the same, but it can be quieter, gentler, deeper. And sometimes it can heal parts of you that grief never touched. Because grief may change love, but it does not end it. No one prepares you for this truth. When you're young, intimacy feels physical. It's chemistry, attraction, the rush of being wanted. At 20, you worry about how you look in the light. You measure your worth by how quickly someone reaches for you. But something shifts after 60. And here's the part no one talks about. Intimacy stops being about bodies and starts being about bravery. Because by this stage, your body tells a story. There are lines where laughter lived, scars where surgery saved you, softness where time gently reshaped you, and emotional scars too, promises that broke, trust that cracked, moments you had to rebuild yourself from the ground up. You are no longer hiding these things. You've lived, you've struggled, you've survived, and survival changes the way you love. At 60, the hardest thing isn't taking off your clothes, it's taking off your armor. Real intimacy now sounds different. It sounds like, I'm scared too. It sounds like, I don't know how to do this anymore, but I want to try. It sounds like, I still want you. And perhaps the most vulnerable word of all, stay. Because at this age, you understand what leaving feels like. You understand loss. You understand disappointment. You understand that not everyone who says forever means it. So choosing to open your heart again, that's courage. There's a curiosity here that many younger people don't yet grasp. What happens when two people who have already been broken choose each other anyway? Something extraordinary. There's less pretending, less performing, less trying to impress. You're not competing with anyone. You're not trying to prove you're desirable. You already know your value, and that makes your desire honest. Intimacy becomes slower, not because passion fades, but because presence matters more. A hand resting on yours means something deeper. Eye contact lingers longer. Conversations stretch into the night, not because you're chasing excitement, but because you're savoring connection. And here's the life lesson hidden in all of this. The most powerful form of intimacy is not physical perfection, it's emotional exposure. It's saying, this is who I am now, not who I was at 25, not who I pretended to be at 40. This is me, with my history, my fears, my hope, and I'm letting you see it. That is bravery. And sometimes that kind of intimacy is more fulfilling than any youthful romance, because youthful romance is often built on illusion, who we think we are, who we hope to become. But love after 60, it's built on truth, truth about time, truth about pain, truth about what actually matters. And when someone looks at you, really looks at you, and chooses you knowing all of it, that kind of connection doesn't fade easily. It's softer, it's steadier, it's stronger. So if you're over 60 and wondering whether intimacy still belongs to you, remember this. It was never about the body, it was always about the courage to be seen. And you, after everything you've lived through, are braver than you've ever been. Aging is often described as loss, loss of youth, loss of strength, loss of energy. But that story is incomplete. Yes, bodies change, skin softens, energy shifts, hormones rewrite their own rules. The mirror reflects time more honestly than it once did. But here's the curiosity gap no one talks about. What if aging isn't only about what fades, but about what deepens? Because while the body is changing, something else is growing quietly and powerfully: patience, empathy, emotional intelligence. At 20, love is loud. It demands attention. It rushes, burns, and consumes. It wants to be seen and celebrated. At 60, love becomes something else entirely. It becomes intentional. You no longer fall into relationships, you step into them. You listen more, you react less. You understand that every person carries a history you didn't live but must respect. This is where intimacy transforms. After 60, intimacy isn't about impressing, it's about understanding. It's about eye contact that lingers, not because you're searching for approval, but because you're truly present. It's about hands held longer, not out of urgency, but out of gratitude. It's about conversations that stretch past midnight, not fueled by excitement alone, but by comfort. And laughter, it's richer now because it's layered with shared memories, inside jokes, and the relief of being with someone who doesn't require explanation. There's a life lesson hidden here. Depth is a form of beauty. The world celebrates young love loudly. It posts it everywhere. It applauds the intensity, the drama, the grand gestures. But mature love, it doesn't perform. It whispers and lasts. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need validation. It exists quietly in routines, in shared cups of tea, in knowing glances across the room. After 60, you understand something younger love often misses. Consistency is romantic, safety is attractive, peace is intoxicating. You've learned that passion without respect burns out. You've learned that attraction without kindness fades. You've learned that love is not about how fast it starts, but how gently it stays. And that understanding changes how you connect. You're more selective now, not because your heart is smaller, but because your standards are wiser. You don't waste energy on chaos. You don't confuse drama with depth. Instead, you choose calm, you choose honesty, you choose someone who meets you where you are, not where you used to be. This is the quiet power of aging. Your body may no longer move the way it once did, but your soul moves with clarity. You know what hurts you, you know what heals you, you know what matters. And perhaps the most important truth of all is this: depth makes love durable. When intimacy is built on emotional intelligence, it doesn't crumble under pressure. When connection is rooted in empathy, it grows stronger with time. So if you ever feel discouraged by the changes in your body, remember, you didn't lose yourself. You expanded. You traded surface level attraction for soul level connection. You traded speed for substance. And that kind of love, the kind that whispers, understands, and stays, is not weaker than young love. It's stronger because it has depth, and depth lasts. There is a question many people carry quietly, especially after 60, but rarely speak out loud. What if no one ever looks at me that way again? Not with politeness, not with kindness, but with desire. The kind that says, I see you and I want you. This fear doesn't come from vanity. It comes from loss, from change, from watching the world slowly shift its attention away from aging bodies and toward youth. And over time, that silence can make you doubt something deeply important, your desirability. But here is the truth that reopens the door. Attraction was never about age, it was always about aliveness. Aliveness is energy, presence, curiosity, warmth, the way someone listens, not just to respond, but to understand, the way they laugh without guarding it, the way they care about life, even after life has tested them. When you take care of your spirit, something changes, not in a dramatic movie scene way, but in a quiet, magnetic one. You walk differently, you speak with more honesty, you stop shrinking yourself to be acceptable, and that is attractive. There's a curiosity gap here that most people don't expect. What if the most powerful version of you hasn't passed, but arrived later? Because after 60, you are no longer performing. You are no longer chasing approval. You are no longer tolerating love that makes you anxious. Now you choose. You choose who has access to your time. You choose who gets your vulnerability. You choose who gets to sit beside you in the quiet. And that choice creates confidence, not the loud kind, but the grounded kind, the kind that draws people in. Love can arrive at 61, at 68, at 75, and when it does, it often looks nothing like the love you knew before. It's calmer, healthier, more respectful, because now you are not choosing from fear. You're not saying yes because you're afraid to be alone. You're not staying because you think this is your last chance. You are choosing freely. That freedom changes everything. You communicate more clearly. You walk away sooner from what hurts. You recognize red flags not as challenges, but as warnings. And you value peace more than excitement. And here's the life lesson hidden beneath it all: desire does not disappear when you age, it deepens when you stop abandoning yourself. The moment you allow yourself to be seen, truly seen, without apologizing for your history, your body, or your years, you step back into your power. Desire at this stage is not about being chased, it's about being chosen and choosing back, chosen for your depth, chosen for your honesty, chosen for the way you show up. So if you're wondering whether it's too late to feel wanted again, remember this: the only thing that ever made it feel impossible was the belief that time had disqualified you. It hasn't. You are still here. You still feel. You still have a heart capable of connection. And sometimes the love that arrives later in life is the love that finally gets it right. Because now you are no longer asking to be desired, you are allowing it.